Okay, welcome. I'm actually quite happy that you're all here. You could choose between a lot of good speakers, lunch, and this talk, so thank you for that. So for me, it was actually kind of a moment to be on this conference again. Made me really happy to walk the venue, see each other again, seeing old friends, meeting new ones. So for who of you is this the first time having a multiple day conference again in a while? Yeah. Makes you happy, right? So just to get to know you a bit, by show of hands, who is involved developing software? Oh, okay. That's a lot. Well, keep your hands up. So, and who is happy doing that? Okay, and who of you, manager is not in the room? Okay, okay, good. So actually, because you're all happy, I saw nobody lowering his hand. So I want to ask you, what do you think, or what makes you happy as a developer? So please go to menti.com and fill in the code, or do the QR code, please. I never did this before, so I didn't practice this. So it can either way go wrong, and you have some fun, or it works out like I expected it to work out, and I having some fun. Okay, look. So some people like coffee, a successful build in Java. Okay. Salary, yeah. That's what makes the world go round, right? Ooh, coffee is still a big one. Awesome. Challenges, responsibility, solving problems, autonomy, people. Yeah, good one. Okay. We'll go back to that one if we have time in the end. So. Okay, so my name is Roy Braam. I'm director of Open Value Amsterdam, and there actually my job is making our developers happy. And with happy developers, we can also offer our customers the best developers, right? But beside that, I was a developer and architect for a long time, so I've seen both sides. I worked with boots on the ground in teams, experiencing developing software, and I've also talked with customers about how to develop software. You can find me on Twitter. Feel free to reach out. And if you have something to tweet about this talk, please use the hashtag, of course the DevOps one, but also the happy developer. So I prepared these slides before this conference, of course. But when I was sitting in the keynote, I was actually not so sure about this anymore, because there are lots of things that make people happy, and developers are people too. But then I saw the AI a keynote, and then I thought, well, maybe some are not, but okay. But most people, or most developers, are also people, right? And there are lots of things that people make happy. So think about going out with friends, family, going on holiday, have a good meal, sport, small town things in life, drinking Belgian beers, right? They're all things that will make people happy. Some do like games, their side project or the pet project, cars and watching Netflix. But that's actually not what I want to talk about. Obvious on a tech conference. I want to talk about what makes developers happy. I want to focus on the developers and their experience while developing software. And I think we can do much better than we are currently doing in the tech industry, in our IT industry. I really am convinced that we can improve, and we can make people happy and more efficient, or we can make developers more happy and efficient. I think most of the times I still see teams building up a whole cluster just for a chat functionality, or they're doing all kind of side things just to get that one feature done. Although the team has a goal to reach, to do something, they're still focused on doing a lot of other things. And I think that the coming time ahead with AI and all the things that will change, we have quite a huge challenge as developers or as IT industry to fix everything that's behind us, so all the legacy, but also do all the things that we need to do, so all the AI and all the other stuff. And I think the challenge will be much bigger, and we are just with limited people. So I think we can do much better in providing better developer experience. So what is developer experience? So there are lots of contexts about a developer experience. But to me, developer experience is a good developer experience is about creating an environment in which a developer can do their best. So of course, developer experience is also how you use IntelliJ or etc., right? But to me, I'm now focusing on like, okay, what is a good developer experience in an organization? And lots of times it's compared with UX, right? So like UX to users is as DX, developer experience, to developers. And there are lots of similarities, like developers are users too, of course, all right? They use the stuff, they use every day, the tools, the API, etc. So like I said, DX to developers is as UX is to users. And they have a lot of shared principles, right? Because both UX and DX are concerned about an easier and more enjoyable way of using software or anything else. And but there's much more about DX than it is about UX. I think good DX starts, of course, with good UX principles, but there's more. Because if we are in an organization, we have to deal with the environment we have to deploy our stuff, or the environment we are actually in. The processes that involves developing software, the team chemistry, the tools you're using, the libraries you're using, the APIs that are sometimes not well documented, the infrastructure you have to deal with, and there are many more things we have to deal with during developing software. And I think good developer experience is undervalued. And I'm not talking about the Amazons, the Snakes, the Netflixes, the Apples, and every cloud provider. But I'm now, because I think they do really good in developer experience. That's their focus, right? They are developing stuff for other developers, and that's the focus to make it as user-friendly as possible. But I'm now talking about the 90% of the people here in the room that work for non-IT tech first companies like banking industry, the governance, health, retail, all those people developing on software that's actually not in a tech first company, where probably developer experience is undervalued and has not much attention. And typically, example that I hear a lot is that developers can just figure it out and they can choose and use whatever they want. And we call it DevOps. Right? So, in my opinion, this is typically the whole problem where they just don't care. Or this is typically a management approach of making it somebody else's problem. So who is actually responsible for DX or a proper developer experience? Well, I think we all are. On every level that we work on developing software, we could improve and we could make it a better experience for everybody and making people more happy. So why is good developer experience important? Well, like you can imagine, or you could actually guess already, like good developer experience makes developers happy. And coming back to the title, happy developers write better code. Because if you are experiencing a better way of developing software, you will become more happy. And if you look at the results of a good developer experience, you can see like studies, and also if you talk with companies that are focusing on better developer experience, they are much more efficient in doing their job. They are more motivated, the people are more motivated to get their job done or the goal done. They have a shorter time to market, which works for budget holders quite well. They are much more focused on their end goal instead of doing all the other things around them. They do less duplicates and overhead. They have a sense of ownership. They really want to do the goal that they have. They really want to complete it. They're working together. That's also nice, right? They're working with the right tools. Who doesn't want to? The feedback loops are short. There's a goal within the team, and the productivity increases, and they like to stay longer. So they won't leave your company. So if you have to defend working on developer experience, you can probably pick one of these arguments out of there and use it. There are different type of people that like different type of arguments, right? So coming to the how. That's tricky, because here's the disclaimer. It depends, right? It depends how you are going to improve your developer experience. And although I saw a lot of organizations and I've been talking with a lot of people about developer experience, I can't really advise you how to do it, because it really depends on the organization you are. But what I can do now is I can share a lot of things that I think are good to improve your developer experience by sharing them in this presentation. The interview. Probably this is like a pre-development experience, but I just wanted to make this point because I think it's important. So an interview, when you're interviewing somebody new for your team or new for the job title, or maybe an intake because you're hiring an external, the interview should really match the type of work the guys or the girls are going to do, right? Probably juggling on a unicycle, crossing a river with alligators on a small court while developing Hello World with your toes is not something you need to do on a day-to-day job, right? But time after time, I see people doing interviews, asking all kind of crazy things that have nothing to do with the actual work people are going to do. And I've been on both sides. I interview a lot of people, but I also been interviewed a couple of times. And you should really be aware of what you ask. So if you need a developer and you're asking them to build a shopping platform and it will cost them 5 days of work, then you should really be sure, if you're asking 5 days of work from somebody that's doing an interview, if that is actually what you need. And do you get something out of it as an interviewer, so on the other side of the table? And if you get this kind of assessments done, are you giving proper feedback? I've seen people doing a assessment for 3 days, and then the only reply they get, well, I didn't like your solution. Yeah, right? That's not the way I approach. And remember, because it works both ways, right? So if somebody's coming on an interview, wants to work at your team, he's also checking how the team is. So an interview always works both ways, so you should make sure that you do it properly. So how? Well, get the team involved very soon, right? The team should be involved in the beginning already while interviewing. Maybe you could do, I've seen some teams doing preparing a pull request and then go with the candidate, cross this pull request to see whatever they like about it or don't like about it. Maybe you can do some small coding session of 2 hours together. Focus on the knowledge of a candidate. That's also a lot what I've seen, that people are asking questions that are, well, hard to answer, just to ask these questions to show that they are, well, I'm the guy that knows these answers. But focus on the knowledge somebody has, because probably somebody brings something new, new knowledge within the team, right? So focus on the knowledge that somebody has. So coming to real developer experience, and it all starts with onboarding, of course. And that's the really first touch point somebody has with a team or with a product or with an API, right? Doesn't really matter. It's that magical moment where you actually are making an opinion about something. Like we all checked out a code base from somebody else, run the build, and we had a build successful, right? That's a magical moment that you're running it for the first time and it works, right? Or you're using an API and it actually returns something. Wow, that's this magical moment that you need on an onboarding. And remember, it's not only technical, but it's also social. The goal of an onboarding should be that somebody feels welcome and somebody is productive as soon as possible. And studies showed that bad onboarding make people leave. And I was actually when I saw these studies, I was kind of shocked because a bad onboarding will cause people to leave within a year. Like there's a higher chance of people leaving within a year if they have a bad onboarding. If they have a proper onboarding, they are likely to stay longer than 3 years. And being productive makes a developer happy. So make sure that if you do a proper onboarding and people are getting sooner productive, they will make them happy as well, right? So how? Well, pair, mob, do any kind of XP development. Have a buddy system where you could actually have like, okay, this is your buddy, you can ask him everything you want. He will guide you through the canteen, he will bring you somewhere. Write proper documentation. We don't like it, but we have to. So please write proper documentation that actually explains something to the developers that are onboarding. Have onboarding tasks, so simple tasks that you have, make them in your Jira board or any way of agile way of working. Put them there, let them do these simple tasks to get productive soon, and provide context, because most of the times you end up in a team, you don't know the rest of the organization, and ask for feedback of your onboarding process. So after a month, ask the candidate or the known person in your team, hey, how did you like the onboarding? And improve, make it better for the next time. And go out for a team lunch together. So talk about non-tech things. And there are probably many other things that you could do to improve your onboarding. I think the internet is full of proper ways of doing an onboarding. Another thing that makes the developer happy is good architecture, right? So developer experience is also about having your product within a good architecture, or I should say fitting architecture. And if you look at architecture, then of course oversimplified architecture is extra work later, because you have to refactor a lot. Overcomplex is extra work now. And remember that architecture is not only for architects. Within your team, you should also come to something that works. And again, disclaimer, it depends, of course, I can't tell you. But microservices is probably not always the best solution. So another thing is automation. So automate everything where it's possible. Because developers want to be lazy, right? If you want to go to production, you just want to hit a button or you just want to check in your code and make sure that it goes to production. And you don't want to think about it over and over and over again. The same with your tests. You don't want to do manual tests. You want to make sure that you test your code through pipelines and then it's done always the same way and you never make mistakes. Because repetitive work is really demotivating. Who likes repetitive work? You like it? No? Kind of? Okay. And also you want to fix it once and love it many times, right? You want to really fix it once. Okay. Somebody likes repetitive work drinking beers, that's okay. We're in Belgium, okay. You want to fix it once and then afterwards love it many times, right? It's better to spend like 5 hours on automation for a small task than do it every time over and over manually. Because it also makes it less error prone. So start soon with developing or with automation, right? So if you are building a greenfield project, start with a pipeline first. So bring something to production within the first sprint, although it's maybe a hello world. It doesn't really matter, right? And if you're working on a legacy base, start automating step by step. So do small steps. Every thing you automate is a thing that you win, right? And also, one thing that we forget is that we have a lot of local automation on our laptops and on our devices while developing software, and share them within your team, because something that's obvious for you is probably not so obvious for somebody else. And a build pipeline that takes 3 hours, it is automation, but it doesn't add anything to the developer experience, right? So remember that probably there's something else wrong. Maybe it's your architecture, maybe it's your Jenkins machines or your other machines that you're using for building. But really look at these kind of things and start improving them. So way of working that supports development. Supports development. So not supports managers or something like that, right? So either way you're using Safe, Agile, Scrum, DSDM, RAP, XP, it doesn't really matter. You should choose something that works for your development process and not works for generating a report for management at the end. Also think about a good way that supports your deployment model. So how are you gonna work on stuff that really supports deployment? Also think about feedback, reflection. Maybe you can have like retrospectives, etc. And also think about how you're coming from an idea from the business to a actual something, the feature in production. So how is your way of working doing these kind of things? And don't forget about all these things that developers need focus time, right? Having a couple of meetings a day is probably killing for the focus time and won't make anybody happy. And actually, talking about focusing from a idea to production, I could recommend this talk. It was already in Athene as well. That's Fox Athene. Tamar and Simone will talk about co-creating with UX and software. So really thinking about getting involved with UX and developers as soon as possible to come from an idea to production. So head to this talk, I could recommend. Another one of these things that will make developer experience better is providing the right tools. And I'm saying provide because if everybody is getting their own tools and doing their own choices, it's not providing them with anything, right? They have to do it all over again and again and again. And start with a good local system, right? So developers should have a good laptop. They should have proper licensing for their IntelliJ or whatever they're using. But also have a CI/CD pipeline ready, testing frameworks, monitoring, observability, and logging. It should all be kind of provided to them so they could work with it. So they don't have to think about it. And all these things should be coherent. They should work together, and they might be opinionated, and that's okay. Because providing them with an option just to run it and develop it and put it into production, monitor it, etc., is a lot of value. They don't have to think about it. But leave some room for deviation, right? It might happen that teams think that they have a better solution and they want to take up the burden to do things themselves. And that's okay, and try to learn from it. Try to learn from others, having other tools, etc. But provide them with something that they could use to put everything into production. So one of the questions that you should ask is that you should ask yourself, does every team really need to build their own platform? Because I like Kubernetes, I like it a lot, but Kubernetes is probably not the solution for everybody, right? If you're having a team that's with limited resources, you probably can't maintain a whole Kubernetes cluster. have a boiler project, right? So like a Hello World that actually has a pipeline in it, a Git repository that runs, and you can, if teams adopting these boilerplate projects, they could easily go to production with just simple code, and they could start developing immediately. And set up by self-service, and that's a tricky thing, of course, but waiting is killing. So if you have to ask somebody else to create a Git repo, have to ask somebody else to create a CI/CD pipeline, and you have to wait every time over and over again, that's demotivating to lots of us. We have to wait, we are blocked. Try to provide a self-service where they could actually do all these kind of things themselves. Another important thing is that we should have give power to the teams. And with power to the teams, I mean, like, every team has a goal, but they should be able to do their work, and they should have the rights to do the things. And that also means that they should have trust. So if you look at development, then you have, of course, always the what and the how. So the what has been decided by the business owners. They are thinking about, okay, what do we need to do? And the how is something a team should fix. And they should earn, or they should have this trust that they will fix it. But also between other teams. And with great power, of course, comes great responsibility. But the other way around is the same, right? If a team is feeling responsible for fixing something, they also need the power to do so. And I've seen a lot of DevOps teams that are not even able to look at the logs in production or have rights in production. Right? So are you really doing DevOps if the teams can't do all these things by themselves and they have to ask others? Documentation. Don't leave yet, please. It's okay. Because good documentation writing is very difficult. Most of you don't like it. Me neither. But documentation, you should write documentation with a purpose, right? It should answer a question. So if somebody's reading documentation, it should answer something. And if somebody asks a question that's not been documented yet, write the documentation and point them to the documentation so they could learn from it. And keep it up to date. If something is not explained in the documentation, update it. Or if you change something, update it. Because if you follow documentation and it's not working, it's very frustrating. And also make it findable. It's not dev null. So you don't write documentation, drop it somewhere, and nobody can find it anymore, right? Like Confluence, for example. And also choose the location. So probably having instructions how to build a project should be in the project, like in the Git repository. And how to use an API should probably be in a Swagger documentation or something like that, right? So choose the proper location of your documentation so people can find it. And whenever you can generate your documentation, do it. Another one is work as a team. It sounds obvious, but you work as a team instead of a group of individuals. So in a team, there's no room for loners. And there's also no room for finger pointing. So if there's a mistake being made, not an individual is making the mistake, but the team is making the mistake. And that way, you're creating a safe environment for people to improve, to feel safe, and also to become more happier. And create a culture where it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes, but make as a team the effort to don't get big outages, etc. And help each other. And if you have a pull request, and you see all kind of things that are wrong, but you see a couple of things that are done quite well, give people compliments. Right? So don't only focus on the bad things. So pair, mob, do whatever you need to work as a team. Agree on stuck time. So if somebody's been stuck for an hour on a task and can't fix it, say like, okay, you have only 1 hour to be stuck, and then you ask somebody else. And focus on getting things done. So look at your board of tasks that you have to do, and let's say to each other, like, okay, what do we need as a team to fix it, and not the individual that's working on that single task. And communicate. So get your headphones off, communicate to each other. Well, in Corona time, leave your headphones on and talk to each other to different communication channels. But talk to each other. It's very important while you're being a team. But developer experience is also about empathy. Because you really need to understand the pain of the other. So if you are creating an API and it's being used by somebody else, you need to understand their pain of using it. And also be the user or developer. If you are creating something, also be the consumer. So eat your own dog food. Make sure you're using your own things. And try to fix things for others if you can, right? So if you're developing something that's being used by another team, try to fix it as good as possible for them so they could be, their developer experience improves. I have to look a bit at my time. Avoiding dependencies, I already looked at this one before, but try to avoid blocking dependencies outside a team. So if somebody is having a goal and they should have wait for other teams, I think it's a bad way, right? It gets really frustrated if you have to wait for other teams to do things for you. And again, the self-service. So if you could provide self-services, so for example, seen organizations filling in large forms for having a certificate. If you could solve this with a self-service where people could request a certificate themselves and get it actually, that makes more sense, right, than waiting for a couple of days for your certificate. And again, work together, and not only within a team, but also work together with multiple teams, because you're probably working for the same organization. One of the other thing that makes people happy is, of course, knowledge sharing, because that's why we're all here as well, right? Not only for the Belgian beers, but we're also here for knowledge sharing. And if you do proper knowledge sharing, it really supports growth and innovation within your organization. It also makes a bit of more we instead of them, because it connects each other. Sharing documents, sharing knowledge connects people. And it also really helps to collaborate on working together. And it is fun, right? So sharing your knowledge with teams, and it can be, well, like open discussions, or you can have communities within your organization. It also happens quite sometimes, right? Maybe you can have a Kotlin community or a Java community within your organization. You can give presentations to each other, not only about the project you're doing, but maybe also about new techniques you're using. If you have a bigger organization, you can have a mini conference. Probably it's not as big as DevOps, but that's okay. And be aware that a lot of speakers that are currently here are willing also to give a guest talk at your organization. So that's fine for them. Ask them, people in your local area, ask them to be a guest speaker. It will start a discussion, it will start working together, it will start making a better developer experience. So that's a lot of things that you could do to improve your developer experience. And these are just a couple of them, and probably you know more. But only the actually key takeaway of this talk is that happy developers write better code because they having a better developer experience. And if you, after DevOps, go to your own project, go to your own team, and you go back to do coding or do other things that you do to develop a software project, think about it that whenever you fix something for somebody else, you're improving somebody's developer experience. And actually, you're making somebody happy, right? So if you have any things to share, please use this hashtag. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out on Twitter. This is the QR code for my slides, and I want to thank you. Have a nice DevOps.